Welcome to Education International's webinar on the global status of teachers and the teaching profession, a groundbreaking report that is going to be launched tomorrow on World Teachers' Day. This webinar will investigate that report. The data that this research is based on derives from a survey of 401 affiliates conducted in September to November 2017. 114 of our unions replied. All of the largest unions within the EI fold answered. This is the authoritative voice of the world's teachers. We have with us Deputy General Secretary Haldis Holst.
And I'm very pleased to sit here with David Edwards, who's General Secretary of Education International. And David, we're both teachers. We care about the children around the world. And we know that while we're sitting here, very many kids that will be the graduating class of 2030 have started their school years.
That's right.
they're already finished their early childhood years. And I'm sort of wondering, will the world be able to give them the quality education that they promised while adopting the Sustainable Development Goals and goal number 4 on education? And especially thinking that tomorrow is World Teachers' Day.
Oh.
We're celebrating teachers that are one of the most important factors, at least you and I believe, and I think the world believes, in achieving quality education. The slogan is, the right to education is the right to a qualified teacher. What is happening around the world? Will these kids who graduate in 2030 have a qualified teacher?
I think it's the question that we need to find an answer to. Thank you very much, Haldis. And I think at the time of the launch of our Global Status of Teachers and the Teaching Profession report by Dr. Nelly Stromquist, it's an important time for us to take stock of where we are and the question you asked. Where are we? I think if anyone who's paying attention picks up a newspaper, watches the news, talks to a colleague on the street or in their schools, there's a lot of concern about some trends that we see in the world. There's a lot of insecurity out there. We know that there's growing inequality, wage inequality. We know that there is an increasing number of autocratic leaders that are scapegoating marginalized groups and immigrants and refugees for problems that are not of their making. We see attacks on the free press. We see attacks on truth itself, on evidence. We see public services, the way in which public services themselves are funded under attack. And we see an outsourcing of those public services, and with that, the democratic responsibility to ensure that they're equitably distributed. We see a narrowing of curriculum. And so one of the questions I think we have to ask ourselves is, given the challenges that we have, who is best situated to help the generation that you just talked about, the generation, the class of 2030, to not only access school, ensure that they have an access to school, but make sure that their time in school, their time with people from a diverse background, their time with their teachers, their time is used to help them develop the tools to make sense of this complexity and to understand themselves as agents of change. And the fact that they can actually question some of the propaganda, they can sort of extend their thinking, and they can learn ways of collaborating that isn't just about beating my neighbor or winning or getting to the top of the line, but actually towards something that is going to be necessary for us to be able to solve these problems. I happen to believe, and I think you agree with me, that those who we are waiting for is us. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. Because in every local community, teachers are there. We're at the front lines. We're also at the national level working. We're at the global level working as EI. And we are the ones that our local communities and leaders and students turn to help make sense. What does this mean? Digitalization, AI, the future of work, the future of democracy, the future of the environment, our planet. Who has both the content knowledge, the sort of pedagogical expertise, and the organizational strength to be able to translate what's happening in the world and the ways in which we can inform our debates and take action to help improve the world for everyone? I think as teachers, unfortunately, you would think, well, if teachers are that important, then obviously they're going to be really well remunerated. So I'm sure the report says that they're really well remunerated, that they are really well supported, that their rights are respected, that their ideas are respected, that there is an institutionalized dialogue with them and with their organizations, that they have an opportunity to research, that they have the academic freedom to be able to push back on propaganda and lies and, all sorts of sort of misleading things that are out there. And that we're attracting really great people into the teaching field and supporting them, ensure that they develop along a continuum. Unfortunately, we're in a professional paradox because we're not seeing any of that.
So we need a reality check.
I think we need a reality check.
Yeah, and it's sort of you have all the nice speeches that are valuing teachers and valuing education, whether it's at the UN or around the world, that perhaps what we have to do is to connect that to the reality on the ground and make change happen on the ground where change is needed.
That's right, and I think that's what one of the things that's important in this report is that it's not just describing the trends, what we were calling the big six sort of depressing trends around teacher status, but it's also about telling the stories of what EI affiliates are doing all over the world to take action to improve the status of teachers.
Should we perhaps listen then to some of those realities?
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, let's just start with Charles from Malawi. And what is the real life for a teacher like in Malawi?
I'm Charles Kunchenga, General Secretary of the Teachers Union of Malawi. I am here just to brief you the status of the teachers in Malawi. To be honest, Malawian teachers are in a situation whereby they need to be assisted a lot. I'm talking of their status. One, let's talk of the salary being the first thing. Salary is very low. Secondly, we are talking of allowances. Malawian teachers don't get allowances, while other workers in the civil service are accessible to the allowances. Secondly, the teachers' houses. Teachers are living in dilapidated houses as well as rented houses. And most of the teachers are traveling longer distances from where they are accommodated to the schools. Even the teaching and learning materials are scarce in Malawi. Not only scarce, and they are not in good condition. And the teacher-pupil ratio is very high, to be honest. So that's the status of the teachers. Having noticed that teachers are in problems in Malawi, Teachers Union of Malawi is working hard day and night to ensure that the status of the teachers is improving. Recently, we requested the government to introduce the allowances, some of the allowances in the teaching fraternity. Even the issue of teachers' houses, government has bowed to us by constructing some of the houses in some schools. It provides necessary teaching and learning materials to learners as well as to teachers as one way of sorting out this problem of teacher-pupil ratio. Not only that, we are also talking of teacher-pupil ratio. Teacher-pupil ratio, as I've already said, is very high. But government as of now has recruited about 10,000 primary school teachers and 500 secondary school teachers as a way of solving this problem.
So there's a great example of the professional paradox. You talked about the teacher ratios in Malawi, and we know that they vary very widely from rural to urban areas. When Charles would take you to a rural school with over 200 kids in a classroom, how you do individualized instruction in a classroom with 200 kids is beyond me.
But I think it's also a very good example of how you need a collective voice to tell these stories to government, to the responsible people, so you're sure that they get the true story, and to put demands behind those stories. And I do hear that Charles is trying to do that, but he needs support.
Absolutely. And the issue that I also hear in there is that there's an underlying issue of teacher poverty. So if you're also trying to figure out ways in which you can actually have the infrastructure to get teachers to deploy them where they needed, and that they have, adequate housing and public services in those areas, that's part of an integrated approach that we need to think about. But I do think that it's important that Charles and the TUM are working really hard at making sure governments hear that this has to be part of an integrated approach.
Mm-hmm. That was Malawi.
Yeah.
Should we hear another story? And then perhaps move to another part of the world, but also another sector of education. And I think that if we look at early childhood education, which our class of 2030 already have supposedly finished, that is a sector that is growing a lot. But we also know that some of the teachers there really have challenging conditions of work. So let's listen to Elisa from Denmark.
Sounds good.
Hello, my name is Elisa Rippler. I'm the president of BUPL, the Danish Union for Early Childhood and Youth Educators. During the last year, our union succeeded to make 3 major steps in favor of the status of our members. First step, at the general renewal of the collective agreements this spring, we succeeded together with other female-dominated professionals to raise the question of equal pay. As a result, we got a specific amount of the general pay rise reserved for unions with many women members. Still a long way to go before we have 100% equal pay in Denmark. Anyway, this year we got a little step further. Second step. In July we got a new pedagogical framework for early childhood education based upon research and the knowledge and professional experiences of our members. To start, the government wanted to change the framework in direction of more academic skills. We reacted and proposed to have a master group with researchers, our union and the ministry. The master group recommended young children's development, learning and well-being to depend upon play and a holistic learning environment. And very important, the decision how to implement the framework should be based in single early childhood center. These recommendations were passed by the Parliament. Third step. As a result of BUPL's strong and constant criticism of cuts in the budgets, the government a few weeks ago announced an extra 1 billion Danish crowns for the next 4 years to be paid to have more educators for children at risk as well for early intervention. Though this amount only will add 1 educator in 450 centers, it's one step ahead to our aim.
One step is an important step to take. I think, this is really, really important because what they've done BUPL, I think, Haldis, is they've talked about the fact that we hear your proposal. We don't accept that education is this sort of narrow, this sort of narrow, easily measured thing. And we're not just going to criticize, which we will do, but we're also going to bring some people together. We're going to inform, we're going to create our own proposals, and then we're going to mobilize communities around those proposals to bring about change in the Parliament. So I think it's very exciting what they've achieved.
Yeah, I also think it's great, and also that how they combine the quality of the services and the content of the services they are delivering. What is really education with the support that teachers need? So they're sort of combining their bread and butter issues with the professional issues, and I think that's the way to move forward.
And another point in hearing our colleague from BUPL, I'm reminded that over 90% of ECE staff, education personnel, are women. Teachers are women. And it was very good and heartening to hear her talk about the need to talk about equal pay for equal work and make that part of a gender equality, gender equity campaign in her country.
Oh, it was great. And to see how unions can play a very constructive role in moving education and society forward. So they're not just a watchdog, they're also being very constructive with their proposals of how to move forward.
Yeah, I think I was going to say it's not always one union in a country that's trying to bring proposals forward. And I do think that we have learned inside of EI and the sort of thinking about the future of our unions and our movement and how we renew it in terms of our renewal work, ways that we can find common ground between EI affiliates in a country and look for those examples and to be talking about how they together work to in times of where they have to resist and in times when they have to propose. I think we have some good examples of that coming up, don't we?
Yeah, we do, and how we can have collective voices become a collective voice. So let's move to New Zealand and listen to Linda and Jack.
Fantastic.
Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. So I'm going to talk a little bit about NZEI and the work that we've been doing over the last while, and also the work that we've done alongside our sister union, PPTA. So we've had a decade really of neglect in New Zealand. We've certainly had a decade where the global education reform movement was really actively pursued by the previous government. So what's happened? We've had an election of a new government, and straight away we saw the abolition of national standards. That was as a direct result of that new government having worked alongside the unions over the last few years. So also with our Kua Tai Te Wā campaign, which is the campaign around our principals and teachers collective agreements, and also that campaign that's even more than that, bigger than that, because it's around attracting and retaining people into the profession, we have engaged our membership right across the country. We've done a very strong media campaign as well with our teachers and our principals telling their stories, their realities, so that there's a really clear understanding from the public around what it means and what it looks like to be a principal or a teacher in this country, and the fact that that significant pay jolt and that decrease in workload is well and truly warranted.
Tēnā koutou, ko Jack Boyle tōku ingoa, ko Tumuaki ko te PPTA te Wengaroa. I'm Jack Boyle, President of PPTA, the Secondary Teachers Union here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and I'm hugely privileged to be able to talk to you colleagues across the globe today about what has happened in New Zealand to raise the status of the teaching profession. PPTA were involved in the creation of a bill before the House of Parliament around restoring democratic representation to our Education Council. All of these things happened very quickly because of our continued advocacy on behalf of quality public education in New Zealand, and we are looking forward to a range of other things that are going on at the moment, including the development of an education workforce strategy, where we are using the Education International Framework for Action around Agenda 2030 in order to better identify where the workforce of tomorrow are coming from, what supports they need to come into the profession and to remain in the profession. We have seen the development of a union-owned administration hub for continuous professional learning in secondary, and that's starting to be funded as well. And we are also right now in the early phases of our collective agreements for 2018.
A very exciting example right there, I think. You know, and I think it's very heartening for us to hear how work that we're doing around 2030. You talked about the class of 2030 can contribute and support work that's being done at the national level by our affiliates.
I think they're also the story that it adds to is not just about collective bargaining, it's about all the other work you do too. They give a strong case on the importance of advocacy, of getting your message out there to the whole community, the whole society. They've been using media campaigns and so on. And also that they don't just wait for the government to respond, that they actually take initiatives themselves. That's being very proactive.
Yeah, I think the mobilization they just held was historic for the country, actually. I was looking at some of the press support and the support from parents and students alike, so they obviously are doing something right that needs to be replicated and learned from.
Should we hear another voice?
Yeah, this is great.
But now I think we're going to move into higher education, the tertiary sector.
Sure.
And we'll go to another David, but this time to David from Canada.
David Robinson from CAUT.
You're right.
Let's go to David.
My name's David Robinson. I am the Executive Director of the Canadian Association of University Teachers. And when we talk about the status of higher education teachers in Canada, the major trend that we're dealing with is the increasing casualization and precarious work in the sector. And we as a union, working with our associations, have been working on contract language to improve the terms and conditions for contract staff, the pay and benefits, but also ensuring they have a pathway to a career path within the sector. Oftentimes contract faculty get stuck in teaching contracts, don't keep up the research record, and when full-time jobs come, they're excluded. So we're working on ways to ensure that those contract positions can be converted into full-time positions for those who want full-time work. Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about contract work is talking to one of our members a few years ago, he expressed to me his frustration that he has to be Mr. Happy in the classroom all the time because his continuing employment or the renewal of his contract is contingent almost entirely upon getting positive student evaluations. And in that context, you don't want to be controversial, you don't want to mark too hard, you don't want to upset anybody because that could mean a negative evaluation and your contract's not renewed. So there's real implications for academic freedom and the quality of education that we're providing. Yeah, some of the things that we've been able to negotiate, and there's still a long ways to go, but some of the gains we've made is ensuring seniority rights for contract academic staff, so they often have the right of first refusal when a contract comes up based on years of service. Working on conversion language of getting those long-term contract academic staff into a full-time permanent position. That's been a much harder nut to crack, but we're slowly making some progress there. Yeah, we just conducted a survey of our contract academic staff members and some really interesting results. Many of them have been teaching for a long time, about 20%, more than 20 years teaching as contract instructors. These are people with PhDs who have an active research career, or at least try to keep an active research career going. There's a huge untapped potential there, but these are very highly qualified people, often working at very low pay, very few resources available to them. Many of them don't have offices, don't have telephones or email accounts with the university, but extremely highly qualified, highly motivated people who we need to tap into much better to make our system a much better system for our students.
Great example of the professional paradox as it plays out in higher education with the increase of casualization, which is a very serious issue. And particularly if we look to our universities to be able to be producing research and knowledge and understanding of the complex problems I was talking about, and at the same time we're going to be employing increasingly precarious professors who aren't willing to take risks or do things that are controversial. I'm sure that many of the breakthroughs we've had in societies around this world have come as a result of someone who was supported by a union, who was helping them with the contract language, paying benefits, but also, I mean, the importance of this career path, I think, cannot be understated.
No, and it's almost another paradox too that we're sitting here and referencing the Sustainable Development Goals, which states the importance of education. And we're motivating young people to take quality education, to keep in school for a long time, to get a better future. And this is what we're offering some of the best educated people in the world.
This is Canada.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, if we think about where Canada is, and you have, you know, unionization relatively high compared to other places, that's basically the top of the bar. Yeah. You know, so what we're going to see in terms of the variation will be quite striking, I think.
Then perhaps we should move further south in the Americas, so we can move to Yamile in Argentina and say, what is it like in Latin America?
Right, where you had, I think, recently a very exciting development in Argentina in terms of the higher education unions working together to bring about, actually all across the unions in Latin America, it's probably important to underline, to actually be the first one in Latin America to have a collective agreement that puts into law the importance of public financing and public negotiation, collective bargaining with the teaching profession. So let's hear from Yamile.
En Argentina tuvimos un proceso desde el año 2003 al año 2015 donde logramos avanzar de una manera muy significativa en la mejora de las condiciones de trabajo en las universidades públicas, con una mejora real y progresiva de los salarios, con la sanción de una ley especial, un régimen previsional especial para la docencia universitaria y sobre todo en el año 2015 con la firma del convenio colectivo de trabajo de la docencia universitaria, que es el primer convenio de estas características, no solamente en Argentina, sino en toda la región de América Latina. Fue la coronación de un proceso que se truncó, se paralizó en el año 2015, cuando llega a la presidencia de la Nación la Alianza Cambiemos, que inició un proceso de ataque al conjunto de la universidad, de la educación pública, y desde enero del año 2016 CONADU se encuentra en una permanente confrontación con las políticas del gobierno, que viene produciendo recortes significativos en el presupuesto universitario, que también ha implicado a lo largo de este periodo un retroceso en los salarios de la docencia universitaria y también, por supuesto, la paralización del proceso de implementación del convenio colectivo de trabajo, que tenía todavía que concretarse en cada una de las universidades. Especialmente en este año hemos tenido un plan de lucha muy intenso que empezó cuando iniciamos las discusiones por la recomposición salarial, pero también la discusión por la profundización del ajuste presupuestario en la universidad, y hemos desarrollado una serie de actividades que en articulación con el movimiento estudiantil y también con el sector científico-tecnológico y con otros sectores cercanos a la actividad de la universidad. La situación de movilización fue intensificándose a lo largo de estos meses y sobre todo en los últimos 2 meses, donde se produjo una situación muy notable de movilización en torno a las universidades, donde no solamente las comunidades educativas de las universidades, sino también las poblaciones con las que esas universidades, cada una de las universidades se vincula, hicieron movilizaciones en defensa de esas universidades, y tenemos claro que esta es una pelea que todavía nos va a demandar mucho tiempo para que podamos recuperar una situación favorable para nuestras instituciones.
So I think what Yamile just laid out there in Argentina is how fragile some of the things that we achieve are, and I think we see that in the report too. You know, you don't see sort of steady progress in a unilateral direction. What you see is a lot of different things, and some regress in some places as well. But one of the points that she makes is that it was very heartening to see the entire communities join with the higher education, with CONADU, with others, around the importance of free public higher education as a part of being an Argentine, as part of their democracy, as part of their identity, as something that it's a right that they have, and they were in the streets in the millions to push for it. So I thought that was fantastic as well.
No, that's great, and I think it's great that you're able, as you say, that you kind of setbacks, but to also take time and reflect over your gains, because those are ones that you both have to protect and that you have to move forward on. And I hope they can be an inspiration for other unions trying to achieve the same in Latin America and around the world, because there is a lot that we have to achieve still. And you've referenced our report on the global status of teachers and the teaching profession several times, David. I don't know if you'd like to reflect a bit about the overall results after hearing the videos and reading the report.
Sure. And I should say that this is going to be available on our website, so you'll be able to download it and go through it, because there's a lot of really useful information, stats, data. We're going to be putting out a number of infographics and other things to represent and share the important information that our members have shared with us. You were talking about 2030, you know, the class. And one of the things that the UN and UNESCO and everyone that was involved in establishing Goal 4, Sustainable Development Goal 4, was the recognition that if every student is to have a well-qualified, well-trained, well-supported, empowered teacher, a number of things are going to have to happen. And it's about 69 million teachers that we're going to have to be hired by 2030 over this time period, to the sort of stepping stones process. And the trends we're seeing in this report, what our members are telling us, is quite concerning, given the sheer size of the shortage in terms of the challenges in front of us. We are hearing about a proliferation of unqualified teachers, this idea that anyone can teach, that it's simply a content delivery service, which we know to be untrue, and we have evidence, and we know that it's much more than that. The number of people that are going into becoming teachers is decreasing. So the people that actually want to put themselves through the professional paradox, which is have all the demands of society on you, but none of the supports necessary to be successful, and that we're seeing this high level of precarity, particularly in higher education, early childhood education, and elsewhere, where we're saying, we really need you to help us expand education, quality, and learning for all, but we are not going to say that we are committed to you. We're not going to create a long-term contract for you. We're not going to normalize and recognize your rights. And I think the last one that's coming out of the report that's very quite disturbing, and I think we're taking that on through the Global Response Campaign and other things that we're doing here in terms of ensuring sustainable financing for public education, is this rise in those who seek to profit off the right to education and seek to try to find ways to continually outsource and monetize and commercialize the right to education. So I think there's a number of trends, but there are a number of good signs as well. I think we're seeing strong leaders in our members standing up putting forward well-informed, evidence-based research, ideas, proposals, building partnerships, being close to their members, renewing, giving place to women, to other groups inside to make sure that they have opportunities to lead, to speak, that their voices are heard, and that we are very, very close to our students and very, very close to our communities. So we are just absolutely thrilled to be able to launch this report, and I want to thank you very much for being with me here so we can do this. Thank you.
And thank you very much, David, for giving us that update. And I think that you have described that our affiliates have the work cut out for them.
Yeah.
But that also they've done an awful lot of good work because they have achieved gains. And I guess that we now should also take the time to celebrate all the members of our member organizations tomorrow. They deserve the spotlight on them because they are important.
We couldn't do it without you.